Most people assume that spending more on a watch automatically means getting a better watch. Most people are wrong. The difference between a $50 watch and a $50,000 watch has almost nothing to do with how accurately it tells time. It has everything to do with understanding what you're actually paying for at each level. These are the 7 levels of watches. And by the end of this, you'll know exactly where your money creates real value, and where you're mostly paying for a logo on the dial. Let's get into it. Level 1. Fashion watches and entry quartz. This is where most people buy their first watch without even thinking of it as a watch. A fossil someone gave you for your birthday. A Daniel Wellington bought because it looked clean on Instagram. A Casio picked up at the airport before a flight. These are fashion accessories that happen to tell time. And honestly, there's nothing wrong with that. You just need to understand what you're actually holding. The movement inside many of these watches costs the company only a few dollars to produce. The rest of the price comes from the strap, the case design, the branding, and the marketing budget. This is the world of fossil, Daniel Wellington, MVMT, entry-level Timex, and lower-end Swatch models. Usually between $15 and $100. But here's what people misunderstand about level 1. Cheap doesn't automatically mean poorly engineered. Quartz technology is incredibly accurate. A basic quartz watch can stay accurate within 15 seconds per month. Many mechanical watches costing 10 times more can't even match that. The issue isn't precision. The issue is longevity. Most watches at this level are built to be replaced, not preserved. They're disposable products, except for one major exception. Casio. The original F91W and the G-Shock series don't pretend to be luxury products. They're built to survive. Military personnel and special forces have worn the F91W because it's reliable, inexpensive, lightweight, and doesn't reflect light. Some G-Shocks from the 1980s are still functioning perfectly today. At level 1, the smartest buy isn't the trendy minimalist watch. It's the Casio that will probably outlive everything else you own. Level 2. The gateway watches. This is where watches stop being simple accessories and start becoming objects people genuinely care about. Seiko and Orient built this category. The Seiko 5 line, the SKX007, the Orient Bambino. Now you're getting real mechanical movements with actual long-term durability. Prices usually range between $70 and $500. And for the first time, you're buying something that could realistically be passed down one day. At level 2, the movement finally matters. Seiko manufactures many of its components in-house, which is far rarer than most people realize. Movements like the NH35 and NH36 are famous because they're durable, repairable, and capable of running for decades with basic servicing. Citizen belongs here too, especially with the Eco Drive series powered by light instead of traditional batteries. And here's something most marketing campaigns never tell you. This is where the real watch community lives. Not inside luxury boutiques on Fifth Avenue. Right here, the Seiko Turtle, the Presage Cocktail Time, the Orient Star. These watches create genuine passion among collectors who could afford far more expensive pieces, but keep coming back anyway. One of the best values at this level is the Seiko Presage. For a few $100s, you get a beautiful dial, a mechanical movement visible through the case back, and finishing quality that embarrasses brands charging 3 times as much. Level 3. Entry-level Swiss watches. This is where the phrase, Swiss made, starts carrying real weight. Not because Swiss automatically means superior, but because the standards behind the label actually matter. To legally print, Swiss made, on a dial, a significant portion of manufacturing costs must happen inside Switzerland. That doesn't guarantee perfection, but it does guarantee legitimate Swiss oversight and production standards. This is where brands like Tissot, Hamilton, Longines, Mido, and Frederique Constant live. Prices usually range from $300 to around $2,000. And this is where beginners often make a major mistake. They assume entry-level Swiss watches are purely about status. Part of that is true, but watches like the Tissot PRX and Hamilton Khaki Mechanical genuinely offer movement quality and finishing that many entry Japanese watches struggle to match at the same price. The Hamilton Khaki, for example, uses the ETA 2801 movement. ETA is one of the most respected movement manufacturers in the industry. With proper servicing every decade or so, that movement can run for generations. One of the strongest values at this level is the Longines Hydro Conquest. It competes directly with watches costing much more while maintaining strong resale value and real Swiss credibility. Level 4. Enthusiast Territory. Now we enter the level where personal taste starts mattering more than specifications. Between roughly $2,000 and $8,000, watches begin developing personality. This is the world of Tag Heuer, Rado, entry-level Omega, and Grand Seiko. The conversation changes completely here. You're no longer asking, does this watch work well? You're asking, what does this watch say about me? Grand Seiko deserves special attention at this level. Outside the watch world, many people barely know the brand exists. Inside the watch world, collectors speak about Grand Seiko with the same respect they give Swiss brands costing far more. The finishing is done by hand. The famous Zaratsu polishing technique creates mirror-like surfaces so sharp and reflective they almost look unreal. Machines don't create that finish. Craftspeople do, and the movement decoration often exceeds what many Swiss brands offer at the same price. But Level 4 also introduces something else: brand storytelling. A lot of what you're paying for between $2,000 and $8,000 is heritage, marketing, and boutique presentation. Two watches can share nearly identical movements and specifications, yet one costs 4 times more simply because its brand carries more cultural prestige. Understanding that difference matters. Level 5. The Icons. This is Rolex territory. Omega at its peak. IWC. Panerai. Bridling flagship models. Prices range from around $8,000 to $30,000. And at this level, you cross a line most buyers never reach, and honestly never need to. Because Level 5 isn't just about specifications anymore. It's about presence. The Rolex Submariner is not the most technically advanced watch available for its price. There are watches with more complications, more detailed finishing, and more exotic movements. But the Submariner carries decades of cultural weight behind it. Divers wore it, explorers trusted it. Its design language has remained recognizable since the 1950s. That history matters, and it's one reason Rolex holds value better than almost any other consumer object. But here's the uncomfortable truth about Level 5. You absolutely do not need to spend this much money to own an excellent watch. A Grand Seiko from Level 4 may actually feel more satisfying on your wrist day to day. But if you want one serious watch you can wear for the next 30 years without regret, a Rolex Submariner or Omega Seamaster will never look outdated. That combination of timeless design, durability, and resale value is incredibly rare. And among them, the Omega Seamaster Diver 300M remains one of the best overall values. Its coaxial escapement requires less servicing than traditional movements, and its master chronometer certification represents one of the highest testing standards in the industry. Level 6. High Horology. Now we enter an entirely different category. Patek Philippe, Audemars Piguet, Vacheron Constantin, A. Lang & Son. Prices range from roughly $30,000 to well over $150,000. At this level, you are no longer paying for better timekeeping. You are paying for human craftsmanship, hand finishing, hand assembly, hours of labor impossible to automate. Inside a Patek Philippe movement, every edge is beveled by hand. Every component is polished and decorated to standards most people will never even see because the movement spends its life hidden behind the case. And that's the point. It represents an almost irrational commitment to craftsmanship for its own sake. The Audemars Piguet Royal Oak changed the entire industry when it launched in 1972. A luxury sports watch made from stainless steel with an integrated bracelet. Today, steel Royal Oaks sell for extraordinary prices not because of the materials, but because of what the design represents culturally. And if there's one standout value in high horology, many collectors would point toward a Lang & Son. The German finishing quality is so extraordinary that even elite Swiss watchmakers openly respect it. Among serious collectors, Lang movements are considered some of the finest ever made. Level 7. Collector grade and ultra rare. At this level, watches stop being everyday objects. They become artifacts. This is the world of rare vintage Patek Philippe references, independent watchmakers, discontinued grail pieces, and watches so rare that replacement parts may no longer exist. FP Journe belongs here. François-Paul Journe produces extremely limited numbers of watches by hand in Geneva. Collectors value them not because of hype alone, but because the quality is genuinely extraordinary. Then there's the Patek Philippe Nautilus 5711, a stainless steel sports watch that retailed for a fraction of what it later traded for after discontinuation. Prices exploded beyond $100,000 almost overnight, not because the steel itself became more valuable, but because scarcity and desire took over. And here's the uncomfortable truth about Level 7. Many of these watches are barely worn. They live inside safes. They appreciate in value. They get photographed for insurance paperwork. And sometimes that's fine. The watch market has absolutely created enormous wealth for collectors who bought the right pieces decades ago. But if you think a six-figure watch will feel proportionally better on your wrist than a great watch from Level 5, you'll probably be disappointed. Because diminishing returns hit hardest at the very top. So where should you actually spend your money? The sweet spot lives somewhere between levels 2 and 5, roughly $200 to $15,000. That's where quality, craftsmanship, durability, and value overlap most realistically. Start at level 2 or 3 and figure out what you actually enjoy. Do you care about movement finishing? Dial design? Durability? Mechanical engineering? Answer those questions with a Seiko before answering them with a Rolex. Explore level 4 once your taste develops. Spend serious money at level 5 only when you know exactly what you want and plan to keep it for decades. And unless you're treating watches as investments, you can safely ignore level 7 entirely. That money could buy an entire lifetime of incredible watches instead of one legendary piece sitting untouched in a safe. Because at the end of the day, the best watch is the one you actually wear. Everything else is just very expensive furniture.